suppose the next step for me then was the policing board, which is the kind of Stormont level oversight of the policing. So I applied in June to see what the process was like, never thinking that they would appoint me the first time round, but they did. And I suppose a young woman from the Northwest with a Protestant background is an unusual applicant, so they have to kind of fit lots of profiles, so you need so many men, so many women, so many people from a nationalist background, so many from a loyalist background and all that, so I obviously fitted a box.
I joined the police in 1986. As Barry said, I went to university first. Very lucky, I had a good education, went to a Catholic, all-boys Catholic grammar school. I often say the only thing missing from my great Catholic grammar school were girls and Protestants. But it was a really good school and I got a really good education and got to go to university. First person in my family to go to university.
What have you and the policing board changed in the past year to make the young people of our society safer?
The board very much has at its core human rights, and the human rights of young people are considered there. So there's a monthly meeting around what the PSNI do in terms of human rights issues, and within that it's about keeping people safe. So we also then would take advice. We have a youth advisory panel that I chair, and round the table are members of organisations who work with a whole raft of young people. So that's from the Education Authority, who work with young people from all over the place, to people who work with very vulnerable young people, and also young people who are involved in the criminal justice system. And we are constantly getting information and advice from people who are experts in that, and how we can keep young people safe, and working in partnership with the PSNI to make sure we come up with strategies that are going to ensure your safety. And that's a lot about influencing your behaviour as much as anything else. But so we will look at key things that are impacting young people at the moment, and that's from lots of advice, and it is a huge amount of work, but really we're at that level where we look at the strategy, and then the PSNI will very much carry out the operation of that and the day-to-day run of that. So I might sit around the table and talk about how it's a great idea, and then we pass it off to Tony to actually do it.
How to protect yourself when you're on Facebook, when you're on Twitter, when you're doing your Instagram or Snapchat or whatever it is. What does that mean? How to protect yourself from predators who are out there, but actually how to protect yourself, from doing something daft that you'll regret. Because when that image is up there, girls and young man, when that image is up there, it's up there forever. I'm really conscious that antisocial behaviour sometimes isn't that antisocial. It's really about you folks gathering with your friends on a Friday or Saturday night and chatting. And I'm really conscious that we don't label that as antisocial. Now, when it gets into the criminal, when it gets into breaking windows or drinking on the street and, annoying people, kicking their doors or whatever it is, that's different. That's beyond the bounds of what's reasonable. If you're standing around having a chat, that's not antisocial to me. Actually, that's quite social. That's just you engaging with your friends. And we're really conscious with the neighbourhood teams of not labelling people, of not criminalising those sorts of behaviours, and actually pushing back sometimes against communities and saying, do you know what? Those young people weren't doing anything.
And then I suppose in the height of the troubles around Drumcree time, particularly from the community that I'm from, that level of respect flipped on its head very, very quickly in relation to parading issues. I was 19 at the time, and my perceptions of policing changed overnight, in a very negative way, I have to say, overnight. And I have been on a personal journey myself over the last 10 to 15 years to reconnect again with policing, from where the police have came and where they are now. That's my motivation for the job that I do, is that I have also challenged myself in terms of my own community's perceptions of policing, and it has changed again, thankfully, as Roger said, back into policing with the community. Within Protestant and loyalist areas and Catholic nationalist areas, policing is still very much an issue. It's hard for communities to engage with each other, as well as policing, and there's a legacy of policing in those areas as well. So my job has been, through our community network, has been trying to reconnect communities to police again.
Do you think that the time spent in the RUC affected your lifestyle?
When my kids were at school, they were told that Daddy was a civil servant, and certainly never mentioned that he was a police officer. When you went to maybe go out to your car after being parked overnight, In case somebody had put an undercar booby trap underneath the car, you would have dropped your keys beside the car, and when you were picking your keys up, you'd have had a quick look underneath the car to see was there anything additional attached to it. You did that because you didn't want to draw attention to yourself. So yeah, there were pros and there were cons, but overall, I was very glad I was a police officer for the 27 years. We live in a far better environment now, where more and more you have folk from different communities joining the police. In my time, the police service was only 6% from the Catholic community and only 6% female. Nowadays, some 15 years later, it's roughly 30% are from the Catholic community, which is still far too low, and 30% are from the female community. So, it's good to see progress being made, but more progress still needs to be made.
What is your organisation's role in local communities?
We would get queries all day, every day for different issues, not just on policing, but police officers would be in regular contact with me, looking us to help them to go into communities which maybe were at one time no-go areas. There's no really such thing now as a no-go area, which is good, but to try and help build relationships, to do programmes with them, to try and go in their own uniforms and communicate with young people and leaders within the community. So my job has been about breaking down barriers between communities, rural communities, and breaking the myths between communities and police. And I think it's important to understand that in my job there's no interface walls. So if I walk into a village or a small town like the likes of Portadown or the likes of Belfast that have walls that are separating communities, rural areas don't have that. So if I drive into a village, it can be split 50-50, but there's no wall down the road to tell me what side of the road I'm on or where's welcome and where's not welcome.